Real life.
Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Brenda Orchard. I'm the CAO for the County of Lennox and Addington, and I'm just here today to do the selection of chair process. But before we start that, I'll get you to wave when I say your names for the committee members. So Mayor Steve Ferguson, Councillor Sam Branderhorst. We have regrets from Councillor Brad Nyman. And from Lennox and Addington County, we have Warden Nathan Townend. We have Councillor Doug Davison, and we have Councillor Tony Fritsch. So welcome, everyone. So our chair each year rotates between the County of Lennox and Addington and Prince Edward County. So this year, the chair is Prince Edward County and the vice chair is Lennox and Addington County. So I'm going to start this off by asking if we have any nominations for chair of Palace Committee for 2025. Mayor Ferguson?
I nominate Councillor Branderhorst.
Councillor Branderhorst, are you willing to accept the nomination?
Yes, I am.
Do we have a seconder for that nomination? Doug Davison, thank you. Okay, just have to do this 3 times. For the second time, do we have any nominations for chair of Palace for 2025? Seeing none. The third time, final time, do we have any nominations for chair for 2025? Seeing none, we can say congratulations, Councillor Branderhorst. By acclamation, you are the chair for 2025. I'll continue on and ask for nominations for the vice chair for Palace for 2025. Councillor Davison?
I nominate Tony French.
Tony, are you willing to accept the nomination?
Sure.
Great, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Warden Townend. For the second time, do we have any nominations for vice chair? Third and final time, do we have any nominations? You can't give this away, Tony. Do we have any further nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, we'll say congratulations, Tony. Acclamation, you're vice chair for 2025.
Thank you.
And with that, I will turn the meeting over to our chair.
Brenda, we should get a motion to to close the nominations and acclaim both.
Okay, can I have a motion to close the nominations and to accept the chair and vice chair? Warden Townend, seconded by Mayor Ferguson. All those in favor? Great. Passed, thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Councillor Branderhorst.
Hi, thank you so much. So I'm assuming we've already done call to order, but if not, I'm just gonna start it. So let's do our call to order and adoption of minutes. Was everyone good with the last set of minutes from our November 14th, 2024 meeting? Seeing nods. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes? Councillor Fritz. Sorry, Tony. And
I'll say it once because it's an odd last name. It's Fritsch, just like
Fritsch.
Yep.
Got you. Thank you so much.
Tough one.
And can I have a seconder, please? Warden Townsend. All in favor? That carries. And okay, now we're going to go to approval of the agenda. And then is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. So we're going to move straight into matters of consideration, starting with number 1, childcare and early years funding. This is a report being brought forward from Kent Tar, Acting Supervisor of Social Services. Kent, do you want to take it away and give us a little overview?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Brent-Horst. Good morning, everyone. I don't have much to add to the report itself. It provides an update on the Ontario Child Care and Early Years Guidelines for 2025, along with our funding allocations. I would like to highlight one important update. So as of January 1st, 2025, base fees for childcare have been capped at $22 a day for families with children aged 0 to 5. And this is another step towards the transition to the average fee of $10 per day by the end of 2026. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, great. I'll start asking my questions. So my first question, Ken, is thank you for this update on this report first. And what is the portion that's allocated specifically to Prince Edward County?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I don't have the exact number that's allocated directly to Prince Edward County because the funding is based off of operating spaces and licensed spaces. So it'd be based on spaces that are in Prince Edward County. When we send out the final funding allocations, we can come back with the exact amount that is actually allocated to Prince Edward County, but I don't have the exact number at this time.
Okay, if you can keep us updated on how that all gets dispersed and how it all goes. I'm also wondering, is this being traditionally brought through in the normal sense through the Pellis website? Or is it also getting encouraged through the different hubs in their satellite branches?
Yeah, so can you explain what you mean by the Pellis website? It gets the funding gets rolled out through to the licensee, so it would be in Prince Edward County, it would be the hub, which would be the licensee in Prince Edward County.
But if there was any new licensees to want to be a part of this, how would that move forward?
Yeah, so with the new Seawalk cost-based funding, a new licensee would come to us and submit an application to be part of the Seawalk funding formula, and that would have to be approved through our directed growth strategy. So we would review the application for the licensee, and then we would determine if they would be eligible to receive the funding, the Seawalk funding through the directed growth strategy. So yes, I guess they could submit an application to us for that funding.
Sorry, that's good. That's really good to know because we have a few interested individuals that have been putting towards new developments in our area. And if we can just be able to streamline efficiency on where people have to go and give them the proper information, it's always important to have. So appreciate it. Thanks. Any more questions on this before I ask for a mover and a seconder? Nope. Okay. Mover and seconder for this report, which will just end up being the recommendation is, I think, just for information. Councillor Davidson. Sorry, it is Councillor. It's not Warden, correct? I think last time.
Counselor.
Councillor. Thank you. And Councillor Fritsch. Amazing. Perfect. All those in favor? And that carries. Okay, moving on to number 2, homelessness and encampments funding. Pellis staff to bring forward a report of funding to address homelessness and encampments. This is being brought forward by Scott Robertson. Scott, great to have you around.
Hey, thank you, Councilor Brandenhurst, and congratulations on becoming chair. So the province does this from time to time. It looks like they had some money to get out the door. And they sent us a letter on December 13th informing us about 3 different programs with application deadlines of December 27th, January 3rd, and January 10th. So there are tight timelines. Of the 3 programs, the first one, the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit, we applied for and received that funding. So we received funding to help 20 people move into permanent housing. And so how this addresses homelessness is we have people in our transitional housing who are ready to graduate and move on. But if you're on Ontario Works, you have $390 to put towards your rent. So that was a really limiting factor. So we're going to help 20 people living in our transitional housing move into permanent housing. And then that will leave 20 spaces in transitional housing that people who are living in encampments can move into. So that was the idea behind that funding. And I'm pleased to say, I think we've already got, I didn't check this morning, but I think we have about 4 or 5 people that we've already helped with this funding. The other 2 funding streams, one was for responses to encampments. And it was designed for, let's say there's a shelter that normally has 30 beds, but they only had enough money to operate 20 beds. So this would have given them enough funding to operate. Interesting to note too, that all of the funding in that stream had to be used up by the end of March this year. So it was temporary relief, and we really didn't have a system that could absorb those extra units. And then last mile funding initiatives, that was for projects, if there was a project that was ready to go, approved by the municipal planning department, and all they were missing was some money to make their project viable. And we didn't have any, I did check with all of our member municipalities, and we didn't have any projects ready to move forward. So those are the funding streams.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna look to the committee for questions now, Scott. Committee, anybody that has any questions on these items? Great. Scott, you're all mine now. My first question would be, I'm just curious, you got this letter in December 13th, and I understand you had to move quickly with this, but given the fact that part of it was each municipality had to make not quite a pledge, I would say, but agree. I'm just curious, why is this the first that I'm not sure of LNA, but that Prince Edward County is getting this information? Because I think this should have been brought forward to our council so that we could have made a whole decision as a council in it. Because as a split, it just would have been nice. And I understand your recommendations with where the funding went 100%. I would agree to it too. But I just think I'd just like some clarity on why that decision was made.
I did provide the information to staff at Prince Edward County. I think I became aware of this program December 20th. And I informed Ellis and I think Adam, I could check my email, just to see about any projects that might be eligible.
Wait, so the letter went out December 13th and you didn't get it until December 20th?
I wasn't made aware of it until then, no. But I was still able to respond and research and find whatever. I'm confident we didn't miss any projects that were, ready to move forward. And I'm aware of some of the projects or I'd like to think all of the projects in Prince Edward County, and be it Pinecrest or whatever. None of those were along the development process far enough to be eligible for last mile funding.
And I understand that. I guess it's just to take the funding, you had to make the pledge against or with the removal of encampments, or that you're not supporting encampments. I forget who you do that.
Yeah, there was, you're right. Sorry, Councilor Branderhurst, to you and to the rest of the committee. Yes, there was a pledge that we had to support. It was actually, again, oddly, they accepted the pledge from me, and with the eventual acceptance from our committee. So timing was tight.
I get that. For me personally, I don't know. I guess maybe this is more of a ministry pushback. I'm not appreciative of the ministry putting us in that to make that as a tight decision, because I don't know if I'm morally aligned with the forcing out of encampments. And I think that's the trouble part. Like, it's free money, but at the same point, it's free money to get what I believe the province is trying to get rid of, which is an eyesore in parks, is how they view it. And I believe that's been made very clear from how the premier has talked about individuals who are homeless. So to me, I don't know if I personally would have, if this was a conversation amongst Prince Edward County and our team, if we could have, I can't speak for other councillors. I can only speak for my own moral dilemma. But I don't know if I could have accepted the money, which to me semi feels like a hush money.
I understand your position. And interestingly, there's 46 other housing administrators across the province, including other than me, that weren't happy with the timelines. And it was kind of like, let's apply and get whatever funding we can.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the difficult position that you were put in, and that doesn't change the frustration I have for the province putting you into that situation, because you shouldn't have been pressured to act. And to that, I find very frustrating. Mayor Ferguson, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just for clarification about this, that it is kind of perplexing, December 13th letter and the speed with which this, had to be supported. What exactly was the process for the approval? Just for clarification's sake, just because this happened fairly rapidly at the the latter part of last year. Can you just clarify that, just so we're clear?
Yeah, the ministry was fine with getting the pledge supported by me and with future acceptance by council or committee.
So
Which usually isn't, Mayor
Yeah,
Ferguson,
go
through
ahead.
to you and through the chair and the rest of the committee. Yes, it was an odd one for sure. I think just due to the tight timelines where they requested the pledge. And the pledge was kind of like, commit to this and get the funding, or don't get the funding.
Well, that's what's so weird about it. And the funding could be approved by you without going to council at a later time, right?
Yeah, about the pledge, sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah. The pledge was just, they wanted the pledge, somebody to agree to the pledge, and
Okay.
then a future, because so there's to get on the agenda for the city of Toronto takes about 4 to 6 months in
Yeah.
advance. So there's no way the city of Toronto approved this, but I can tell you the city of Toronto would have benefited greatly from all 3 funding pots.
Yeah.
So it's just, it occasionally happens where they're just looking for our approval and our commitment to disperse the funds as they see fit. And for me, it was mainly thinking about 20 people who are homeless being able to get permanent housing, and then for us to be able to provide the opportunity in our transitional housing to 20 people who are unhoused. That was the main driver.
So has it gone to council yet?
No, I think it's part of this this piece. Yeah, on the last page.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't pick that up.
That's our commitment there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
We are fortunate in that we don't have the encampment issues that a lot of municipalities do. We still have encampments, don't get me wrong, but it's not some areas there's a couple of hundred people. When I think of Kingston one way and Belleville the other way, there's definitely a lot bigger problems with encampments than we do.
Oh, sure. No, I agree. Okay, thanks.
CEO Orchard.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just suggesting that perhaps the committee wants to send a message to the ministry and send a letter to the ministry to say timelines over Christmas wasn't appreciated. The push for that commitment, the declaration, not appreciated. I mean, you can feel free to send correspondence to the ministry expressing your displeasure with the process and how it unfolded.
So this doesn't come, so council hasn't given their approval, correct?
No, this is coming to Pellis first. So Pellis can say no, thank you. You can say, no, we don't want to make this declaration or commitment, and no thank you to the money.
I will personally be making well, I think it should go to each council for their own personal sign off. However that gets presented. I might at my council act to say no to this money. And I understand it's 20 people that get that choice of homelessness funding, and I don't almost know if I should be the person making this decision. I'm not homeless. But also at the same point, I absolutely detest the writing in this pledge that says site clearance, safely and efficiently clearing encampment sites, ensuring minimal disruption to the surrounding community. That means that our provincial government cares more about the neighbors in their homes being not having to watch or be disrupted by homeless people being moved from their current residence than actually caring about them as human beings. That's how I'm taking this pledge that they're asking us to sign, is to sit down, be quiet, take the money. Because if they really wanted to be good as a province, they could just give us the money with no pledge. I saw CEO Orchard's hand up first and then Mayor Ferguson's.
I just thought maybe the committee should ask Scott the timeline for, I believe tomorrow we had an extension. We asked for an extension last week. Am I correct, Scott? And is the deadline tomorrow?
We did ask for an extension, but it wasn't with this,
Okay.
it was with a different one.
Okay.
And Councillor Brandehurst, that you and the rest of the committee, I would see something like site clearance, although we may have made this pledge, but kind of boots on the ground. We're in charge of site clearance, us and the municipalities we work with. So I can guarantee any site clearance would be done very kindly, considering what people are going through. There's a site in Napanee that we've been aware of and we've been dealing with, and it's been us, community partners, the town of Greater Napanee, and we've been addressing it. And we've actually had a person from that encampment move into a vacancy in our transitional housing as a result of this program, because somebody else was able to move out. So although there's the pledge, I think it's still up to us to determine how caring or uncaring we are when dealing with people who are unhoused. And we've been very successful in dealing with unhoused people in a very supportive way. We've had way more successes than some others, municipalities that have sort of taken a hard hand or restrictive approach. Even the bylaw around park use with the town of Greater Napanee, there's a lot of consideration. And if somebody's in a spot they shouldn't be, it's not like, let's pick them up and drag them over here to where they can be. It's discussion with them. And sometimes it's like, if we talk to them today, it might be, we'll check back tomorrow to see how you're doing and let us know if you need a hand. It's kind of like, we're here to help. How can we help? And is there anything we can help you with? And so people have been moved out of zones where they don't want them, but it's not like 8 o'clock this morning, the police show up and haul them off. It's maybe 8 o'clock this morning, somebody shows up and chats with them, and then a follow-up tomorrow with maybe, okay, by Monday or whatever, or if there's maybe by the weekend or something like that. And we work with them in a very kind and caring manner. I'm pretty proud of the way we deal with unhoused people, especially some of them are, confused and can be angry or violent, and we still deal with them in a very kind manner.
Pam?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure and to clarify that because we did not identify any projects, we actually did not put forth a business case for any of the funding to clear encampments. So the only funding that we have access to is the COB funding, that increase. And and that's going to help support those who are living in our transitional housing, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, to move into more permanent solutions, and then those who potentially were or who were homeless to be able to move into our transitional unit. So that's the only funding that has been that Pellis has access to, because we did not put forth a business case for those other two funding streams. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Mayor Ferguson?
I think the response, I think the Scott kind of clarified that I was going to ask what the nature of what the process is in dealing with people who are caught in this situation. So Scott responded to that. I mean, it's just so weird that this is occurring as the new president of the United States is talking about doing basically the same thing on a much larger scale. But Scott, I just wanted to verify that this was going to be dealt with in a humane, sympathetic fashion. You've responded to that. Thank you.
Yes. And
Yes.
to
Scott.
with regards to you and to the whole committee, but specifically to the people from Prince Edward County, I have talked to Ellis Ziegler about this funding, and we've reserved some of this funding for people living at Leeward House as well.
Yeah.
So we're just through that process to see who's ready to move, so you can move, and then there'll be more spaces available at Leeward House. So it's not just, so when I think of our transitional housing, I think of the housing we operate, but I also think of Leeward House. So just wanted to make sure people knew that that was included as well.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. It wasn't meant what I said as an attack on the quality of the work that you do, Scott. Like we have chatted personally quite a few times, and I believe our Pellis team and you leading the homelessness section of that does incredible work. I truly do. And I believe that you really, like you said, I believe that more people are being helped in our area or our combined areas than other areas, just through that leadership. For me, this is what scares me is to commit to this pledge and that it falls, that we support, even though like I believe our team can do it wonderfully, like you said, very well done with care and compassion at hand. But what happens to the other areas that might not happen in? And by signing our name onto it, we are then co-supporting the dangerous situations that others might be put in, where some areas might not act with the same care and compassion. I understand, like, and once again, I'm also looking out at a snowy winter day right now, and it feels absolutely horrible to be denying 20 people warm homes. So I'm not. Can we send, I guess this is a question for CEO Orchard. Do we have to include, and also Pam, I'm going to bring you into this. Since we only accepted funding in the one area, can we send our pledge back with only writing that we will be supporting that one area and not the ones that I personally find? Is that possible?
That's going to be a question for Pam, because I don't know the ministry as well as she would.
And unfortunately, I don't actually know if that's possible, but I'll certainly look into that and get back to you on that question.
Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
I can look into it. Usually they want you to accept the whole pledge, but I can check into that. And I would argue too that although there's the pledge, we're still in charge of how we do this.
100%. For me, it's just me personally as the counselor that has to raise their hand at the end of this motion, putting my name on the signing of it. It's nothing with staff, but it's my own moral compass that is having the problem. And I have no problem. I think I'd have to relieve chair by putting a motion on, and the other members of Pellis, if they are uncomfortable with what I am stating and they want to just move forward with the pledge, to move forward with the pledge. I'm fine with putting that on too. Because this may be my own personal moral dilemma, not with others. And they might be seeing this as a different moral dilemma, as in that's 20 people that might not get housed. And I respect my colleagues here and yourself and everybody who's working here, that it is up to them to make that decision, not myself. Mayor Steve Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think also whether this is, if there's a refusal, a partial refusal, whether that needs to be a council decision.
Right, from each of our council, like from both councils.
Well, from Prince Edward County Council, and LNA, of course. That may have to be I think it likely would have to be a council decision. So clarification about that process would be helpful as well.
CAO Orchard?
I just think the committee should just double check with Scott on, have we started spending this money? How much has been spent? If we say no now, do we send the rest back? I'm just wondering where are we at in the trajectory or the rollout of this? So that's one thing. And then the second thing, absolutely, Chair Brandehorst, if you want to make a motion, you can step down from chair. Councillor Fritsch can take over as chair if you wanted to make a motion and see if that gets support or not. But I think you probably want that answer from Scott before you do that. And regardless of how that vote comes out, even if the vote was to sort of plug your nose and swallow and do the declaration, it can still go in with a strongly worded letter from Pellis Committee saying you don't find this appropriate and funding shouldn't be tied to declarations that have political overtones attached to them. That's not who we want to be, especially with social services. I mean, it could, regardless, I think you probably want to send that messaging, but I'll leave that up to you.
I appreciate that, CEO. That's some good putting in. I'm going to go with Councillor Davison and then Councillor Fritsch after.
I understand the sentiment that's being raised here. I mean, but I just don't see us returning this kind of money. We need the money for our homeless people, and so I just couldn't support returning the money back.
Thank you for your perspective, Councillor Fritsch.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Councillor Davison took the words out of my mouth. So I feel the same way, and I agree. I completely understand where you're coming from and why you feel that way. But again, boy, we got to help everybody we can, and if we're helping even one, every 1 out of 20 is one person whose life is having a significant change, by the help they're receiving. So the scales push me to go in that direction. But I agree, we should. I think we should go back to the province and say,
Send the letter.
absolutely, this behavior of the province and how the position they're putting us in, and what the signal, the message they're sending, I guess, with that decision. You can't agree with that. That's wrong. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. That's wise words from both. I think then I will actually make the motion and step Scott, before I do want to just ask the question of funding. Where are we at with already spending funding potentially? And also, where does this land still on each council to vote? Will this be coming to each of our own councils to vote and solidify? Will it be a come in the traditional way, or at least our traditional way, as I think it's just a motion to approve within the minutes that are sent? I'm just curious on what does it look like moving forward?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Branderhurst, to you and through you to the rest of the committee. I haven't checked this week, but last week, I believe 8 people had been awarded the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit funding. And then how this comes through to your councils, I will maybe leave that to Brenda to answer that. My understanding is what the requirement of the province would be for Pellis Committee to approve this pledge, and that's the limit of what they're requiring or asking for. If you wanted to entertain this at your council, and if Lennox and Addington wanted to hear about it there, that's fine. But my understanding is support of the pledge from this committee would satisfy all the provincial requirements.
CO Orchard.
Through you, Madam Chair. So Scott is correct. It would just take a motion of this committee to continue on and decide whether they want to add on a strongly worded letter, that sort of thing. You could you could put a pause and say to staff, stop processing anymore, stop at the 9, and you want it to go back to each council to then provide direction to this committee. And you could have an emergency meeting. We don't have to wait like the 2 months for the next meeting kind of thing, to provide more direction to committee if you would choose to. But the province will accept it from Pellis is the service manager to the province. We'll accept it from this committee, depending on how you want to vote. So, I mean, you could tell staff to freeze it until you make a decision. Then that's, again, up to committee.
I have, luckily, both community leaders, I believe, right here with our warden and mayor. Would you like to speak on, do you think it should go back to each council? Or would you like to, which then we can also vote as a whole committee? I'm just getting a vibe of what you think each council would like. Mayor Ferguson?
Well, I think what is going to be least harmful to the people affected, because ultimately that's what we have to concern ourselves with, helping people. So Scott, I tend to agree that if we're we've been put up against a wall here, we don't want to negatively affect people finding more secure accommodations. Can you shed any light on that, Scott, what the implications are to those affected?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I know that, sorry, Mayor Ferguson, to you through Chair Branderhurst. I'm thinking, I know that the committee is struggling with the details and the wording of the pledge, but I'm just thinking if we go forward, maybe I could bring forward, if the committee wanted, some of the good stories that will result from this funding, just people that are able to move on. It's got to be disheartening for a person in our transitional housing to finally, after, a 1.5 to 3 years, you've ended your addiction, you're getting treatment, you're getting help for your mental health issues, and then you come to the depressing conclusion that you have $400 a month for rent, and that's limiting you from moving to the next step, which is permanent housing. And this funding allows people to move there. So I think it is important to help the people where we can. And sometimes it's just like, yeah, there's a tough commitment to the pledge to agree to, but I think I think we kind of take whatever funding we can to help the people we need to help. And the COB program, by the way, we've this I think since 2021, we've had funding through that program. We've been able to help a number of people. So definitely this funding was greeted with lots of excitement here from caseworkers and other staff that were like, oh, great, have I got an idea for a person who could benefit from this funding? Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I just what it does. So any kind of delay is going to could negatively affect the people this is designed to help. And I certainly get what Councillor Branderhorst is feeling about this. I can't say I disagree. It's just, it's pretty awful wording in a letter. And granted, we aren't as affected as other communities, but still, I do like the idea of a very strongly worded letter going to the province about, some of the comments that have been shared this morning. But it's a very difficult situation that we're being put in, as evidenced by the fact that we've been talking about this for quite some time now. And, it's just an awful position. But thank you for clarifying that the delay is really a delay will not be helpful to those that we're trying to help, or that need to. Let's put it that way.
And there's a little bit of pressure here because we have to have all of this funding allocated by the end of March.
Yeah. Okay.
CAO Orchard.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just trying to find a middle ground because I very much understand your concern. Might it help if this committee prepares that letter, that strongly worded letter that, calls attention to the fact that they're asking us to make political decisions, are the strings tied to getting money, which is really, or political statements that are tied to getting money, which is really inappropriate. And then providing that to each of the councils, Prince Edward County and Lennox and Addington, to go to the councils, for them to also then send the letter to increase the platform and the visibility of this issue, versus just not making the declaration and not taking the money and maybe it fades away. It's elevating the platform and the messaging. Just wondering if that might help in the decision making.
Oh, I think that helps. Warden Townend, I asked you a question and didn't want to take you away the chance to talk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think so. Just a couple of thoughts. Provincial governments, to one extent or another, always tie funding to government priorities. I would say in this instance, it's very blatant and overt, and it has an ideological flavor to it, and that in and of itself, I think, is problematic, regardless of the content. But I do agree, from an ideological point of view, I too take issue with the content. I think, knowing what I know about the minister's position on this, and I know Mayor Ferguson will be able to back me up, there's no clearing encampments is the number one priority from the ministry. They're not gonna back down on that. So if we want to register our displeasure with that, which I don't disagree in doing, I would ideally like to see it happen in a way that doesn't punish the people we're trying to help. And unfortunately, like it or not, that's the position the government's put us in. So, I guess in a sense, I agree with the sentiments of others around the committee who've, more or less said the same thing. But I also want to back up you, Madam Chair, in the comments that you've made, because I don't disagree at all with what's been said.
Well, I think I'm getting the vibe for, I will step down and put forward a motion for that letter to be attached to that CAO Orchard has talked about. If that works. Do I need to formally pass on the chair, or just, Tony, you're ready to go?
Yeah. I'm ready to go.
Great.
Unless there's some process to do that. So, Councillor Brandhurst, is your motion just related to the letter or to the acceptance of this funding?
So I will add in a addition motion to the main motion. So trying to think of the actual term, but it's escaping me. So just an addition that just says that a letter shall be sent out by the committee in respect to the provincial government not being in favor of how they presented the ultimatum with the funds to help and make the pledge. But I do not need specifics of like the motion to, I trust staff and CAO Orchard that the wording will come out appropriately, as I really feel heard and the intention has been attached. So this is just an addition motion, not the main motion as, so not the main motion as amended.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for letting me clarify.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. A seconder? Just before we have a discussion. Warden Townend, some comments, discussion? CO Orchard, go ahead.
I'm just seeking clarification for staff that are taking the minutes. So is the motion that you're going to accept the funding, reluctantly accept the funding, but also send the strongly worded letter and send it to the two county councils for their concurrence and letter, and for them to send the letter as well?
I would like that, but when we vote, I would like to split the vote to accept the money first,
Okay.
and then
So two separate
Two separate
motions.
motions.
at least
then.
either two separate motions or just split it that we vote separately on the two, just because I would like the opportunity for a recorded vote on the accepting of the money.
Okay, the clerk will have to have two, Tony, sorry, Councillor Fritsch, the clerk will need two separate
Yeah,
motions.
two separate motions for sure. Yeah.
Just wanted clarification.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll split those part. Scott, yes? You had a question?
I was just going to comment to Councilor Brandhurst. If you want, I can get in touch with you and we can work on a draft of the letter that we can then share with the committee, if that sounds like a good plan.
Yep, that works.
Okay.
Did you have a comment, Warden Townend?
It was just a point of order, Mr. Chair. So I assume we'll start with the first vote then on, it makes sense to have that one first. On the money?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I guess I would put forward that motion then, if that, because that's, I know that's not what Councillor Brandhurst is putting forward, so I'll put forward that one.
okay. We have a seconder, Councillor Davison. So this motion is to essentially approve this portion, this funding, this specific funding. Yeah. We have a mover and a seconder. Any other comments or questions on that? Call. Is anyone requesting a recorded vote on this? No. Recorded vote? Okay. So I'll just start on the order I see them here. So Councillor Brandhurst?
Why can't I think of the word? Deny.
No.
Not in favor. That's it.
So no for them. Councillor Davison?
Yes.
Councillor Warden Townend?
Yes.
Mayor Ferguson?
In favor.
Because it's a recorded vote, I guess I vote, so I will say yes. So motion is carried. So I have a second motion here from Councillor Branderhorst. And yeah, well, I'll just ask for a mover and a seconder on that because yes, so we have a seconder. Mayor Ferguson is a seconder. Are there any questions or comments on that? Just to clarify, I think we've discussed that as to what it's about. Okay. So we will start with you, Councillor Branderhorst.
In favor.
That's a yes. Councillor Davison.
In favor.
Warden Townend.
In favor.
Mayor Ferguson.
In favor.
And myself in favor. That motion is carried. And thank you. That's great discussion. I'll turn it back to you, Councillor Brandhurst.
And thank you, Councillor Fritsch, for stepping forward. So now that we have all our votes in line, we're going to move on to the next section of homelessness prevention program. Scott, you're still up to the table, so would you like to talk about this one?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, through you to the rest of the committee. So we at Pellis, we address a number of homelessness issues ourselves, but we also partner with community agencies to generally either enhance our activities or to provide things that we don't provide. For example, Morning Star Mission in Napanee provides a warming center. We don't provide that at Pellis, so we give them some funding to help them do that. And at the bottom of the report, you'll see a number of community agencies that we have funded. Really pleased to note one additional change to this. It's a new program, and that's having an addictions and mental health counselor that will be working right out of our office in Napanee. So that's great. A piece that's not on here that I want to talk about at some point is the approval for the Heart Hub funding out of Hastings and Prince Edward County. So that will also be a resource for us as well, that Heart Hub. But anyway, so having a person who's going to be able, we hear from our homelessness working groups, from our leadership group and from the frontline group, that they need improved access to mental health and addiction care. So this will help us provide that. Plus a ton of other great things that I know you've read about, but a lot of it is just funding programs that are already continuing so that they can continue on with those successes.
Yep. Thank you for that, Scott. Always a pleasure to see this list. It's a fun list to see. Any questions? Councillor Fitch.
Yes, through you, Chair Brandhurst. Scott, I'm more curious, a very small amount of funding, but on the spreadsheet or the list, there's an organization called, that I didn't know what it was, Land O'Lakes Community Center.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fritsch. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Fritsch, the rest of the committee. Yeah, Land O'Lakes Community Center is located in Northbrook, and it's sort of a hub. There's a number of community agencies there. We actually have an office there. There's a caseworker that works out of the Northbrook office. So this is for anybody's clients who has office space in the Land O'Lakes Community Center. And it's different in rural areas. A lot of people need help with a gas card. They have to come into Napanee for an appointment, or even go to Land O'Lakes, and they live in Denby, and money's tight. They give them gas cards and sometimes a card to get some groceries while they're in town as well.
Thank you. May I ask just a follow-up comment, Councillor Brandhurst? Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, I just know I knew that by a different name, and I suspected it was the same place, but I wasn't sure. So thank you for clarifying that. Great, thanks.
Thank you. And you may always have a follow-up, because I feel like I always ask for follow-ups, so always allowed. Mayor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a question about the transit funding, the transit program, I guess. Can we get some clarification as to how the passes are going to be distributed? Because that's a little bit unclear at this point. And yeah, let's start with that.
Sure. To you, Mayor Ferguson, through Councillor Brandhurst and the rest of the committee. Yeah, so I should have started out maybe saying that, I don't know, hopefully council can recall, we had some issues with covering costs for a rent supplement program. So we had to use some of our homelessness prevention program funding to pay for costs there. So we had less funding to distribute this year. The transit passes, we, excuse me, our plan is that they would be available out of our interior, of our social services office in Picton. And that clients could come there and get them, or that we could distribute them to agencies if they had, we have 5 clients a week that need these. So can we get, I don't know, some bus passes so we can distribute them so that our clients don't have to come to us, then walk down the road to see you in order to get back. So we'll be just coordinating those through our office.
Okay, we just want to make sure it's convenient, as convenient as possible for those that need to use the service.
For sure. That's our goal.
If I may, just one other question related to this. How is this going to be publicized so people know about it?
The transit passes?
Yeah, where to get them, how to
Yeah,
get
we'll let our community agencies know. So we your community safety and well-being plan has several action teams. And I think we're on all the action teams except maybe the one that deals with seniors. So her name is escaping me, but I thought we do. I've done it a few times. Sort of the expression of interest for the to apply for funding through HPP. We went through the central organizer of your community safety and well-being plan, and I think that expression of interest went out to all the members on all those action plans, action committees. So I think I just do the same thing. Just, hey, here they are. Let us know, and so that they're aware that we'll be going forward with it and how it'll run. Okay, thanks for that. Just wanted to, because of the size of the municipality here, and trying to deal with transit issues on a regular basis. The broader publication or targeted communication to those that need it would be very helpful, and please keep that top of mind as this moves forward. Okay, thanks, Scott.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, I'm going to take over. I'm right with Mayor Ferguson. I would also like to see Pella staff reach out, or internal staff, specifically in Prince Edward County, but if LNA wants to jump on board, I never say no, with talking to the libraries, at least very minimum, letting them advertise these programs. Once again, libraries are in all of our smaller communities, and it doesn't take much to put up a flyer on their bulletin boards, or just let library staff know how to deal with this. As when I was at Roma, that was one of the things I was talking about with the municipality, or with the Association of Libraries, is that they're seeing much more homeless and much more at-risk individuals on a daily basis. And they're starting to have to fund themselves with overdose kits, how to be trained in overdose kits, how to run through these situations. So I think it would just be a respectful collaboration with them, that staff can reach out and be like, hey, just so you know, we have these available if you need them passed out because you see a large need in your community, let us know, sort of thing. Or like just to not put extra work on the library staff, as I know they do a lot underfunded, but specifically to help get out information. And seconding that, specifically with the gift cards program, it says that it's specifically going to be at the Pellets office, where we used to be able to give out, I believe it was gas cards and also food cards at our learning center. And that was a great place to also have it handed out, because our learning center does food security. So they have a PEC fresh food market where they get local grocery stores to donate fresh food at a reduced rate or at cost. So I saw that it got moved just to the Pella's office. I'm just wondering what was kind of the thinking with that, about why we can't kind of share the wealth of gift cards.
Sure, Councillor or Chair Brandenhurst, yeah, it was basically money was tight. We didn't have as much money to distribute to community programming or programs as we have in the past. So we just consolidated a few things, we'll just have the cards at our office. And if groups need them, because like I get it, sometimes people need that bus pass to get from Wellington into Picton to go to do whatever they need to do. Well, it doesn't work if they're there and we're here and they don't have a bus pass. So we sometimes give out bus passes to people before they leave town so that they can get home and that they've got one to get back in again. So yeah, that the decision to do that was just, we didn't have enough money to distribute as much funding as we would have liked. So we just centralized some of it to our offices, both in Picton and Napanee, Amherstview, and Northbrook.
And I get that. I guess I don't understand why that still lesser funds can't be shared among the organizations to give it out. And specifically, it's just because I understand if you're in town, and it's, once again, nothing to do with staff and or the staff that works in these offices. I just know that specifically in Prince Edward County, our Pellis building is on Main Street, Picton. And some people that might be just needing help with a bus pass or help with groceries once might not do it because of the negative connotation that they're worried that the community will start speaking about them, and might just find it easier, specifically if that bus pass is already at Leetward House, but people might not know they're living there. Or if that bus pass is already at the Learning Center, or the gift card for food already at the Learning Center, that it, once again, it's not trying to take away services from the Pellis office. That's not what I want to do. It's just,
No.
Can we share the little bit that we have, just in case there are people that might not be in that catchment?
Yes, certainly we can't. It was never our intention to limit access or to cause people stress to get access. And I will follow up on your library piece. Last fall, we went out and talked to all library staff in Lennox and Addington County and in Prince Edward County, just about resources for homelessness. And a coworker and I were just talking last week about, and our plan was to go in and talk to staff annually. And we wondered if maybe we should be doing that every 6 months, because definitely, just in Napanee, we're very aware of our library staff having to deal with a number of unhoused individuals and their behaviors. And we made a connection between the library staff and the staff here who deal with unhoused people, so that they have a resource to call. And they've definitely been calling, and definitely there's more action happening. And so maybe it's time we reached out to library staff again. Maybe we should do that every 6 months. I know staff actually really enjoyed going and chatting with people about it, and people had the libraries were very interested for sure.
And I love that idea of going every 6 months, specifically just because what your staff deals with and the different funding and everything seems to be ever changing, new ideas, constantly shifting, which is the very exciting thing about what your team does. But that's a lot to stay on top of. And so I would encourage all the conversation, because that's, if everybody can hear and know the wonderful things that is being presented, all of the wonderful opportunities. I know that's something we talk about a lot in Prince Edward County. It's almost like, how do you just get out the information of everything that Pellis is doing? Because there's so much, and it's changing, and different programs shift names, and it's just a lot to stay on top of. But that's also just speaks to the dedication of your staff. So thanks.
No, thank you.
Any other questions specifically on this section? I am seeing none. So we are going to, can I have a mover and a seconder to support the homelessness report? Councillor Davison. And Mayor Ferguson. All those in favor? That carries. No recorded vote this time. Now we're going to go to Kochi and OPHI investment plan update. Pam, you get this one. Scott, I'm sorry, but it's been lovely chatting with you. Time to go to the wings and let Pam
Thank you.
take
There's
center stage.
still another report, but yes, you still.
Oh, you do still have. Oh, never mind. I'm
Eventually,
skipping.
just
No,
get a break
no.
from my raspy voice for now.
Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Pam, you're up.
Right, sorry. So through you, Chair, to the rest of Council, this report is just really to inform you that we did use the flexibility to request a shift in funds from operating to capital, where we were underspent in certain areas and needed it in other areas in order to maximize the funding. And had we not requested that, then that funding would have had to be returned to the province, which we did not want to do. So this is really just informing you of the request that we made to the province for that shift. So I'm happy to answer any further questions you may have.
And questions from the committee? I am seeing none. So I am slightly curious on no, never mind. Sorry, that is for another time. Then I'm gonna take a mover and a seconder for this. Mover and seconder, sorry. Councillor Fritsch, sorry for my mispronunciation, and Warden Townend. All those in favor? That carries, and I see in my excitement, sorry, Pam, to not drill you with questions. I see in my excitement, I see the homelessness report that I skipped of Scott's, which was section item 4. I jumped right to item 5. Scott, would you like to come back and tell us about your homelessness report?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Brennerhurst. So this is groups that you're probably familiar with: the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Ontario Municipal Social Services Association, and the Northern Ontario Service Deliverers Association got together and put a report together, and they talked to all 47 service managers, got all kinds of data from us. A lot of staff worked on getting the data. And they came up with a provincial report looking at how much would it cost to end homelessness, and the answer is $11 billion over 10 years, and an additional $2 billion to deal with encampments. The report really didn't comment about where that funding would come from, except from the province. But one of the more remarkable pieces of this is that right now, 51.5% of the funding used to address unhoused people comes from municipalities. So collectively, municipalities are funding more than half the response to homelessness. And I would argue that municipalities are only partially responsible for the incidence of homelessness, and that maybe the federal and provincial government should be paying more. But anyway, that's what the report says. And I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions from committee? Not seeing any. It was really interesting information, Scott. Like, it was well done. I'm sure we've all heard the crazy numbers coming out from this report, but also from AMO seems to be doing a large push on it too. And it was also something that, when talking to other municipalities, is the thought on everybody's mind is, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to deal with this? Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to kind of figure this out? Because this is now a problem that we all have to figure out. So exciting that you were a part of that. It's great information that came out of it. I'm going to, was there any detailed finances from like the province or, sorry, I didn't read the very large report or not all of it. But specifically, was there financial summary, like guessing on how the feds in the province might divvy up funding to try and pay for this, or was it just all thought of what was needed?
Sure, Chair Brandenhorst. I did read the whole report, and I don't recall them. I actually recall what I recall is it was just sort of stating the number, and I recall me looking for something about, so where do we get the 11 billion from? But that it didn't. I don't think they commented on that, or I would have noted that. I thought that was the part that was kind of missing from the report. But I think also the report was just, hey, upper levels of government, here's what we need. And you can choose to give this to us, or you can choose to continue to struggle with homelessness, I think was kind of their message about that. But I would expect AMO will continue to make this a point, especially given that over half of the costs are incurred by municipalities. I believe you're on mute.
I am muted.
Okay.
Thank you, Warden Townend.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I sit on the board of AMO, and so I can kind of say from the board's perspective, I think one of the key parts of this report is, I mean, to be blunt and candid, it's better data than the government has themselves. You know, it's an example of municipalities actually doing the work and collecting the data, which is essential for any feasible solution. And I think that's also, as a secondary issue, that's what's groundbreaking about it. And I think it gives us a lot of leverage in our sector, you know, to basically make the point that, you know, no time can be wasted, and we haven't wasted our time. So.
Thank you for that addition. It's always interesting to hear what members of the board are thinking, and it's great to know that you're on there in case we want to direct questions towards you. I'm going to look for a mover and a seconder for this homelessness report. Councillor Fitch and Warden Townend. All those in favor? That carries. Okay, we're going to move on to item 6, audited financial statements. Mark Day, you are up to the plate.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Before you in your agenda tonight is the 2023 Pellis Housing financial statements. I'd like to point out a couple of things. Most of our accumulated surplus is tied up into capital assets of 11.7 million. A major change this year that you'll notice in the financial statements, and I'm sure both Prince Edward County and Lennox and Addington are familiar with the new accounting change of the asset retirement obligation that we had to set up in 2023. As a result of that retirement obligation, we've had to recognize a liability of about 2.3 million. So most of that has been amortized. And what that states, as you'll see in the report, is in the statements is related to our housing units due to the age of them. And there is some asbestos that are in those housing units. And so a detailed evaluation was done of those units, and an estimate was determined as to the liability to clean those up in the future. So with the recognition of that and the amortization of the asset retirement obligation has resulted in a one-time loss this year. And you look at the financial statements, it does show a deficit of $1.3 million. However, I just want to point out that we do not have to levy for that in the 2025 budget. It's been recognized in the accumulated surplus. Another thing I would like to highlight too is the mortgage on one of the units on the Meadow Lane property came up for renewal in 2024. It did get renewed for about a little over 2 years. It comes due, it'll be fully paid off in October 2026. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the committee may have, and I am looking for approval of the statements.
Thank you for that overview. Anyone in the committee have any questions? I am seeing none. So I will just quickly ask, Mark, do you know who is on the board of the corporation?
Yes, so all the members of the committee, Palace Committee, along with the CAO Brenda Orchard and myself are on the board.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. I think I asked that last time, but it never hurts to ask. Perfect. That's great. And anyone else before I close this? Okay, I'm going to look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Davison. Councillor Fritsch. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you, Mark. Okay, let's move on to, I believe we are getting through this agenda now. 2025 preliminary budget estimates. Mark, we see Pam, we see Mark, we have a few names on this, but I believe Mark, you're here, so do you want to take it away?
Sure, maybe Pam would like to start off, and through you, Madam Chair, I would like to have a PowerPoint presentation, which actually summarizes the slides of the budget. If I have permission to share my screen, that would be great so that I could do that.
Oh, of course.
Okay. Just want to make sure, is everyone able to see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And with that, I'll leave it over to Pam Kent to start off. And I apologize ahead of time if I'm looking a little bit sideways. I've got two screens going here. So with that, go ahead.
So I'm going to start with the Palace budget highlights. So the overall budget reflects a 3.8% change from 2024. And the cost sharing agreement between the two counties is based on the Ontario Works caseload, social housing units, and weighted assessment. There was a slight increase in 2025 to the LNA share by 0.1. So the new cost share for 2025 is 64.36% for LNA and 35.64% for Prince Edward. And the reason for the slight increase in LNA is primarily associated with an increase in the Ontario Works caseload. The budget does include inflationary costs such as budget and benefit adjustments and administrative constraints. The full-time equivalent for staff complement has remained unchanged or relatively unchanged. It's gone down from 53.8 to 53.7. We do have an OPSU collective agreement which did expire March 31st, 2024, and negotiations are continuing. And then just to highlight that we do receive funding from the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative and the Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative that does support a variety of housing initiatives. And so they are reflected on across several different pages that in the budget summaries that you're going to see. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to go through the specific numbers, but we also have staff present today that may be able to answer if you have any program specific questions, and I'll turn it to them if those questions arise.
Thank you, Pam, through you, Madam Chair. The first slide, and obviously this is on page 59 of your agenda and page 4 of the budget report, is a summary of the overall Palace budget by expense type. And you can see that where the ups and downs are. I'd like to highlight that the revenue offsets, as you know, were heavily funded by the province. 83% of our expenditures offset that by provincial and federal subsidies. Note that the levy increase total for Palace is 232,500 and represents 3.8%. And due to the cost sharing formula, Lennox and Addington County's share of that of 155,900 is an increase of 3.9%. And the Prince Edward County's portion of that levy increase is 76,600, and that represents a 3.5% increase. The next section is actually the same overall budget, but it's broke down by service area. And you can see where those increases and decreases are within with those budgets aligns there. And 2/3 of the net municipal tax levy should be noted is related to social housing. So the next, we'll go through the specific service areas. So social assistance, you can see that the net levy impact increase of 59,000, which does represent a 3.5%. As you can see, the notes that I have on the PowerPoint there, that social assistance benefits represent 8.2 million, are funded 100% provincially, and 85% of the expenditures are offset by provincial revenue. One of the other highlights to note down there too is the external payments there at the bottom, 65,000 for funeral and burials. That's totally municipally funded, and that's included in the above budget. Next, we look at children's services. You can see that the overall increase in levy is 10,400. Provincial and federal subsidies, this is highly subsidized by the upper tier governments, represents 97% of the expenditures. I'd like to highlight too that the administration funding has been reduced from 10 to 5% in 2022. We were getting some transitional one-time funding to help offset those costs. However, that stopped, and the administration allocation was increased by 11,800. I do like to highlight that staff has done great measures to reduce that burden on the levy and adjusted their operations and programs to be able to handle that administration change. Next is the social housing. Again, that is the most strain. That's municipally funded as part of our program. The increase in the levy is 112,600. That is the full year. The last full year provincial federal funding offset of 114,700, and this will be phased out in 2026. Tenant revenue accounts for approximately 53% of the operating budget, and there's just a slight shift to help cover the children's services and reallocation of resources to help those. There has been a slight FTE change into social housing. Next is the nonprofit housing. Subsidies are based on the provincial benchmarking model. The increase in the levy is 25,500. And this is actually the ministry provides indices and to calculate the annual subsidies that we do give to our non-profit housing corporations, along with the COCHI funding is to help some of those initiatives as well. The housing and homeless programs, we've no change in the municipal levy required to fund those programs, and the provincial funding does remain strong in these programs. Next is the capital for the social housing buildings that we're looking at for this year, and along that lines, we have made a commitment of increasing the municipal levy 25,000 a year to help the refurbish and replacement of those social housing units, and that's been an ongoing practice since 2015 and 16. Excuse me. The next slide, you can actually see what the 10-year capital forecast is for the different housing units, and you can see what the expenditures are for each unit. And if you want to know some details, we do have staff available to answer those questions. Basically, that is a quick wrap up of the budget document. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through it in detail. We're here happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I am looking for a motion from the committee to approve the preliminary budget. Maybe I'll stop sharing the screen so that you can see everyone at the meeting, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. If I can see where that is on here, one sec.
Councillor Fritsch, it's you have a question?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, Mark, when I'm actually just looking beyond 25, it's more a question for the years after. But when you look at the capital and major repairs, when you hit next year, there's a substantial increase, which looks like it's, you know, indefinite for a while. Would you, when you get into next year, are you just going to be using reserve to try to level that out a bit, or would we're going to end up with a, you know, $600,000 increase?
Correct. We will be using the reserves, and if there's any surplus in the prior years, it does get allocated to the social housing reserves.
Yeah.
To help offset that. But you're exactly right. There is strain, I think, on all our budgets for capital replacement. When reserves are starting to deplenish, then we will have to increase the levy to help support some of those programs. But obviously, we do whatever funding we can get when there's applications or projects involved. We actually look for funding to help offset that as well.
Yeah. Challenges ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Davison, were you adjusting your computer or do you have a question?
I was adjusting my computer.
Okay. Anyone else before I start asking my questions? I see none. So, I guess I'm going to ask my question to you, Mark, though I think Pam might want to step in because I wasn't sure if I should ask this during the, sorry, pardon me, the Kochi investment plan or specifically in the budget. So I noticed that there was some underspending in the Kochi area, and will that get moved over to the HPP funds to get distributed differently, or where's kind of some reasoning for that, or where's the money going to get spent?
Maybe yes, maybe Scott or Pam can maybe address that question. I know we do, when we can, we do allocate to other projects if we can.
And and Scott, please do jump in, but for OFI, there's the operating and there's the capital piece. And if we're underspent on either of those pieces, then we do have to return it to the province. I do not believe we have flexibility to shift it to HPP. Is that correct, Scott? So we do our best, which is why we asked for that realignment to ensure that we are maximizing the use of those funds.
That's correct.
Is there any way, like, does those funds have to be 100% spent by Pellis, or is there any way that we can, I don't know, reach out to other organizations or community groups or anything to try and get all that money spent between? I'm not the best with knowing the procedures, but I'm just wondering, like, can we have like a call out and be like, hey, if you're willing to help or do something to get the money spent or get it done, just so then we're not giving it back to the province.
Yeah, so we did do that. So some of the funding from Kochi goes to our housing providers so they can complete capital repairs. And then the OFI funding, rent supplements are always really difficult to predict because people pay 30% of their income. And, we never know if somebody's income is going to go up or go down, and that can adjust that. But, a portion of the OFI funding went to Ontario Renovates as well. So that's pretty exciting.
Okay.
But so we have reached out to the community to try to make sure that we not only spend all the money, but definitely have the the best impact that we can with the funding.
Do you think that part of that reason was lack of individuals stepping forward then from our communities, or is it like, is there a way that as a community we can advertise better so then we're not losing those funds? Or
no, actually with both of the realignments, they're required due to the unpredictable nature of the rent supplement programs. So in one, we ended up with not using all of our rent supplement funding, or that we had allocated for rent supplements, and one we spent a little more than what we'd allocated for rent supplements. So it's when we weren't covering rent supplements with this funding, then it was much easier to predict and much easier to get the money out the door and have it line up. It is odd that there are two different programs and they both have an operational and a capital side, and just trying to balance that. I would prefer it if the province said, here's your money, tell us what you did with it. But I don't know why they would need to approve whether we spend 100,000 in operational or 200,000 in operational. I'm not sure. I know they want to know, but I prefer to tell them at the end rather than seeking their permission to switch funding between streams.
No, thank you for that, Scott. That clarification helps. I do just have an overall question for anyone who wants to answer it, which is with Prince Edward County's amount going from 36% to 30 or 36.04 to 35.74, which doesn't seem like a crazy change in percentage, but it's something. I'm just curious on, do we expect then we've already set our budget in December. Are we expecting then how would I put this? That we will not be making the expectations of some of our budget promises from this change? Or is it more like, should we be concerned or not that the amount or the percentage is starting to shift? Just any answers to that?
Maybe I can address that, Madam Chair. Depending on what you used for that. So that was an estimate. As you can see, it really shifted very slightly this year, mainly on the case load. Like part of the other factor, the distribution is assessment too, weighted assessments. So that is another factor of the split between Prince Edward County and Lennox and Addington County. So if one of the municipalities had severe growth or decrease in values, and that could affect the allocation between the two as well. So it's sometimes hard to predict, but then depending on the caseloads have remained fairly consistent, I think, in the last few years.
No, that's helpful. Sometimes just always watching the creeping, but no, that helps to know that it's how that's broken down. Do we have any more questions from committee before I call a mover and a seconder? I see none. Committee, mover and seconder. Councillor Fritsch, Warden Townend. All those in favor? That carries. Okay, so now we are on to metrics. And I believe, Liam, you are presenting on this. Would you like to take it away?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I don't really have anything else to add to the report, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions committee may have if there are any present.
Any questions from the committee? I am seeing none. I would just like to ask just one thing. I'd be curious just to see, and maybe this is impossible, but more of a breakdown between the different stats specifically for Prince Edward County. I'm not sure if that's able to happen, but it would be interesting to see just for our own information, different numbers like percentage in like on the homelessness buy list, how many are getting resituated in Prince Edward County, how many aren't, how many are on the list that are in Prince Edward, just so then we can properly see how maybe just as our own individual municipality we're doing on some of these metrics.
Yeah, through your chair. There is currently filters on the dashboard itself that allows you to kind of filter both the Palace area entirely and then also the different individual municipalities within it. But we can look at expanding some more of the data collections where possible, as those filters don't necessarily always apply to every single data piece within the dashboard. But we can definitely explore kind of looking into what those statistics would look like.
I mean, I would be personally interested. It is on a little bit like Ontario Works, child services, and I think housing, and then some get broken down a little bit between the two different, like we get 16 on the active buy list in Prince Edward County when you break it down. Yeah, I mean, let me sit on that. Maybe I'll ask you next time with a little bit better of a thought. But no, that is helpful. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm seeing none. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Davison. Councillor Fritsch. All those in favor? Okay, excellent. Now I'm going to ask for my favorite motion, meeting to adjourn. Anyone want to move and second this? Mayor Ferguson, Warden Townsend. All those in favor? Great. This meeting now adjourns at 11:36 a.m. Thank you for our amazing team. Thank you for our committee I know this one was a long one, but thanks for everybody for participating and giving us your thoughts and your well-researched answers.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
everybody.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.